We'll show you how to get free tier deployment to Posit Connect Cloud. I am using a 100% new Linux distribution and new Positron install, no other configuration. In the Shiny examples, Shiny for Python, we're using the simplest possible example here, which is a slider bar. The purpose of the video is to show how to deploy a data analytics application to the cloud on the free tier. Within the free Positron editor, I'm going to open up a folder which will house our new Shiny for Python application. I'm going to call my application basic-demo. This video also focuses on using UV, which is probably not as easy to use as pip because of the dependencies, but we'll go through it anyway. I think UV is generally superior for larger projects. In the new folder, I'm going to create a file called app.py, which is blank. I'm going to paste in the very short code from the demonstration. Using Shiny, we can just grab that slider and create the UI element for the slider with that one line of code. You can see on line 1, the import has a linter error because I have not installed the packages yet. I'm going to use UV to install the packages. I'll use UV init to create a new Python UV project. I'll set up the virtual environment with UV venv. I'm going to activate the virtual environment on the console with source.venv, which is the name of the folder that it's in, /bin/activate. Now I'm going to add the packages, primarily Shiny, UV add. I have quotes, I have Shiny, and then a square bracket express, and the square bracket, and put another quote there. I'm going to go to the terminal. I've closed Positron. I'm going to start Positron again after I activate the virtual environment from the terminal. So in this scenario, I'm starting Positron from within the Python virtual environment that's been activated. Okay, so let's start up Positron again. In the lower left hand, I guess there's some type of menu really at the bottom. It does say where the Python interpreter is stored, right? So initially it's saying that it's grabbing it from /bin/Python, but in the upper right hand side, I selected a different virtual environment. And now with the virtual environment that I have in my project root, the linter errors are gone. Obviously, you won't have this problem if you use your system Python, but if you use your system Python, you may get a bunch of packages in there and it may cause conflicts in the future. So I always use a virtual environment. Within the Positron pane, we can test out application and run it inside of Positron. Make sure that it's ready. Now I'm going to press publish to Positron. So this is a completely new setup. I have not configured Positron at all. There's nothing in here about my credentials. I do have a Posit Connect Cloud account, but if you don't have one, it'll just tell you to create it. So I'm going to select the top one, which is Posit Connect Cloud, not Posit Connect, which is for local on-premise deployment. If you don't have an account, you can create one with, for example, I'm using my Google account. I'm going to authorize the connection between the Positron publisher and the Posit Connect Cloud. So the process is there's a local editor, and then it's going to open up a web page, or you open up a web page. You log in to the web page, and then after that, you can authorize the connection to be automatic after that point. So it's going to store some credentials. I don't have the keychain on my local Lubuntu system, so I'm just going to have it stored in the less restricted environment. You can install the keychain later. You probably won't have this on Windows or Mac because you have the keychain already there. I'm going to need to create a requirements.txt because I'm using UV. I don't have the requirements.txt. If you're using pip, it might be a bit easier, but my general tutorials cover UV because I think it's superior. So I'm going to use on the command line UV to export the requirements.txt in the format -- format requirements.txt. I'm going to use no hashes, and I'm going to use a redirect into the file requirements.txt. So now that I've got the requirements.txt, and if you did add additional packages with UV, you have to do this process again. Just remember that requirements.txt is not automatically created. So I have to select it in that checkbox. I'm going to deploy again to Posit Connect Cloud. But it's actually pretty straightforward. It's easier than with other hosting platforms that I've used. I think it's a nice integration with Positron. So the output on the console said that the process had been finished. No problems at all for this type of simple application. And voila, it's on the web, ready to use, looking pretty smooth. I'm going to test it with an incognito browser just to make sure that I can log in or access the application publicly without being logged in. So you can now send it to your friends. This is fantastic. It's much easier than my previous experience with LeapCell, although it was also nice of all of these other companies to provide access to the community. My conclusion on Posit Connect Cloud is that for the purpose I'm looking for, which is data science, it's the best hosting platform that I've evaluated so far, although the tests are still ongoing. I'm just going to test it with Fast API, which is not designed for. I believe their target audience is just data science use. The integration with Positron is very easy, and it's a very smooth flow with the data science tools. And this compensates for the lack of backend Python features. We need to pick the best tool for the job. And I think if this job is to deploy a data science application, I believe this may be the best tool. It's important to understand what the service can do and cannot do. If you're trying to have a web interface where you store images or files or other things to the file system on the server, the service is ephemeral, meaning that when you reboot the service or something else, your files will disappear. If that's the type of application you're building, you need to write your application so that it stores the images or the files like a spreadsheet or something else. And if you need it in the future, you have to connect it to S3 or something similar. You can have images in your application, but if you store it on GitHub, those are the images that will be in applications, like say for a storefront or something. If you try to upload images from your running application, it may not work reliably. And it's the same thing with the SQL storage. So if you're using SQLite and it's storing the data into a local file, when you reboot the server or you redeploy it, you're going to lose the data that was written into the SQL database if you're using SQLite and it's running locally. So you need to write your application so that it connects to a remote SQL server, like for example, the Supabase free tier. And finally, so if you're using, for example, FLET F-E-L-T in a web-based application, there's no bidirectional sockets. And I haven't found a free service that actually has bidirectional web sockets. So if your application has, in particular, bidirectional web sockets, you're going to have to pay. And in this case, the cheapest one is probably Fly. Of course, I think the best thing to do is to abstract away your data science visualization application from the rest of your Python backend and deploy the data visualization and interactive visualization to the Posit Connect Cloud, and then use a separate service for the heavier Python work.